for our kids, and I could tell you, son, that I gave all I had to give to build a big wolf pack. Get 'em howling at the wind, yeah, we could make a comeback. Feel the weight of it all and I let it sink in. But this ain't nothing new, it's what I'm always thinking. And a break in the flow is like my mind blinking. A moment of rest, nah. And in the pause I can feel all the weight start to lift. Like a rift in the clouds, like my favorite song loud. A story coming clear over the crowd, so I listen in close, nah. Yeah, and I hear the future go something like this. Sound of the singers coming through crisp. Steady ourselves, climb back to the bliss, and welcome anything that walks through that mist.
Hello. That was a brief little clip from Luke Wallace's song/music video comeback. That was beautiful. He is one of our fabulous guests today for episode 3 of seasons 3 Coastal Insights. I am one of your hosts, Mackay Sharp, and I'm casting from Treaty 6 territory, which is the traditional lands of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dene, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and Métis nations.
And I am your second co-host, Aryan Tomar, calling in, casting from the unceded territory of the Chiana Beecher Bay First Nations here in so-called Vancouver Island.
Right. And I encourage everyone who's watching to let us know where you're casting from. We'd love to hear and we'd love to shout you guys out as you come into the stream. But yeah, in the meantime, I just wanted to do a little intro to this episode of the season. So welcome to episode 3 of Coastal Insights Seasons 3, Hope, Equity, and Advocacy. As the title suggests, it's focusing on hope, equity, and advocacy in a world changed by the COVID-19 pandemic. This episode is about art as a tool for change. And Raincoast did a really good write-up about this episode subject, and I'm just going to read it because I think it's a really good place to jump off from. But climate change and environmental degradation is asking us to care about all of the inhabitants of planet Earth. Art and film can play a tremendous role in conservation as powerful tools for storytelling and creates emotional connections. In this webinar, me and Aryan and our 3 fabulous guest speakers will explore how we have used art and film to expand the collective awareness of environmental and social issues. And we are far more willing as humans to protect what we love and facilitate change when we have a genuine connection to place and to nature. And so artists and filmmakers can be powerful agents of promoting that positive change. And I think I can speak for myself and for Aryan when this is like such an exciting subject for the two of us, as it's very close to home for things that we are also both really passionate about. So I'll pass it off to Aryan.
Yeah, thanks, Mackay. Mackay and I are both just like super engaged with kind of this idea about using art as a way to motivate change and to spread awareness. We both made films about climate justice and climate action. And at least for me, like, it's just been a really great way for me to combat climate anxiety, and to kind of take the power of storytelling into my own hands, and to really just kind of say, like, I can make a difference just by sharing my own truth and kind of uplifting all the great movements that are around me at any time. So thanks, Mackay, for passing off to me. And I'd love to talk about our partnerships. This season is a partnership between Raincoast Conservation and Take a Stand Youth for Conservation. Raincoast is a group of humans, researchers, scientists, and conservationists based on Wasanish territory who are doing incredible work and confronting some of the very real problems facing our diverse ecosystems in the province of BC. Raincoast is a science-based environmental charitable organization dedicated to protecting the lands, waters, and wildlife of coastal British Columbia. And they do this through their mandate, which is to investigate, inform, and inspire. Mackay, off to you.
Right. And alongside them this season is Take a Stand, Youth for Conservation, which is an organization that myself and actually one of our guests today are a part of. I'm really excited to be working with these guys. They're amazing. And much like Raincoast, Take a Stand's goals are kind of based on the principle of, creating an informed community of engaged people. And what I really appreciate about Take a Stand is their focus on motivating and empowering youth to protect the environment through art, film, and youth-driven action, which is especially relevant for today's conversation. And yeah, just to add on to what Aryan said, it for me, like, it's so overwhelming and at times hopeless seeing everything that's happening globally and locally. Like, one thing that inspired me when I was when I was younger was, we have this really iconic glacier where I grew up on Comox territory. And it's like the basis of a lot of traditional stories from the land. And it's this really iconic symbol. And it's estimated to be melted and to disappear in the next couple decades. And that was kind of always like a constant reminder that we need to be doing more. And so I think that was kind of the basis that inspired me, just on within the local context, to be making work about what's taking place on the island, not only just to engage people and to inform them so they can, do more work collectively, but also just as a means of documenting what's here, just in case, whatever happens. So yeah, I'm really excited to continue this conversation. So I'm actually going to pass it back to Aryan to introduce our first couple guests.
Yeah, so thank you, Makai, for speaking about that. And this episode's going to look a little bit differently. We've got 3 guests, and Makai and I can also have a lot of our own experience that we might be able to throw in here. So we're going to be doing a panel. And so our first guest speaker on this panel is Luke Wallace, whose music we were listening to in the beginning of the cast. Luke Wallace embodies a new wave of politically charged folk music, writing the soundtrack for a movement of people rising up to meet the social and environmental challenges of our times. The new album, What on Earth, to be released in March 2020, will be Luke Wallace's 5th album release. You can find Luke at folk festivals all over the West Coast or leading rally sing-alongs at Canada's biggest youth climate marches. Known for his catchy songwriting and inspiring musical delivery, Luke continues using his music to amp up and inspire the folks fighting for a better world. His message-driven songwriting has landed him slots at Salmon Arm Roots and Blues, Vancouver Island Music Festival, the Vancouver Folk Festival, and an opening slot for the global roots band Rising Appalachia. So I'm going to bring on Luke now, but as a personal note, go listen to his album. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Luke, welcome to the stream. And Makai, we're going to have you introduce our next guest.
Yeah, okay, sounds good. Right, so our next guest is Nick, or Nicholas Tykerob. He is an adventure outdoor creative specializing in visual storytelling through photography and film. He's based in Ucluelet and holding a, I don't know what that, I believe it's a master's. I'm going to say a master's in hydrology. Nick's project seeks to expand the collective awareness of environmental issues while encouraging outdoor recreation and exploration of our wild places. He is co-founder of Dendrite Studios, as well as Take a Stand youth outreach program. Nicholas's adventures have taken him around the globe, with the vast majority of his time spent along the stunning coast of BC, capturing and sharing moments of beauty and light throughout. And without further ado, I'm going to add Nick to the stream. Did I get that right? Is it a master's?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, it was abbreviated.
Yeah.
Great. And yeah, Aryan.
Yes, and so our final guest on our panel of speakers is Paige Gorsak. Paige is a queer white settler living on unceded and unsurrendered Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish territory in Vancouver. She was born and raised in Edmonton, and she's passionate about climate justice, workers' rights, and anti-capitalist struggle. Earlier in her career, Paige worked in public libraries and completed her master's degree in gender and social justice. But after a period of climate despair and depression, she found a home in climate movement. She first cut her teeth organizing sit-ins, marches, and blockades in support of land-based resistance movements, and later campaigning for free public transit as a climate and racial justice intervention. Once upon a time, she even ran for federal office with a campaign for a just transition to 100% renewables. As Dogwood's organizing coordinator, Paige is hard at work building grassroots power in the Lower Mainland and supporting the youth organizers of Vote 16. She's enthusiastic about bringing art and creativity into organizing and supporting the participation of young people in the fight to keep fossil fuels in the ground. So here is Paige.
Woohoo! Hello, everybody. So glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you all for coming. Without further ado, I think we're going to jump into the questions. And so our first question is, how did your career get started? And whoever wants to jump in first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll jump in. So I started making films after studying hydrology and earth science for 2 degrees, and wanting to be creative and also to do something that was more related to what I was passionate about. And having spent a lot of times in the outdoors, and that became a very clear value to me. I then started making films and photography about the outdoors, and which then led to stand film, which has led to this. And so it kind of just got started by doing it, deciding that that I wanted to make art, and let's just start doing it.
Well, I have a question to jump off from that. How has your background working in sciences helped you with your career with film and with art?
Yeah, that's a great question. Having studied science, I have a creative problem solving background, which is and is not ego based. So like you're never trying to find the ultimate. You're just like experimenting,
Right.
trying new ideas, and like thinking outside the box and tangentially. And so with film, it's with art, it's pretty much the same thing, thinking creatively, and then at the same time also understanding how to vet sources and material, especially with issue driven projects. Is you need to become an expert on a subject if you want to share about it, and in order to do so, you need to know how to sort through real knowledge and information and a bunch of the other stuff that gets thrown at you. And so my background in university definitely helped teach that process of critical thinking and vetting of sources and knowing where to find those reliable sources.
Right. Cool. Thank you for that. I want to open it up to anyone else if you guys also wanted to jump in.
Yeah, absolutely. I can share. I'm Paige. Hi, folks. My career, well, I guess I can let you know now. As our host mentioned, I'm working with Dogwood, which is a nonprofit citizen action organization here in BC, and we do work around climate justice and Indigenous rights. And I really got into this work through community organizing back in Edmonton. So unpaid, just in the community, taking action, basically with friends, and wanting to have a voice around the environment and climate in Alberta, which wasn't super common necessarily everywhere that we were. And yeah, sort of similar to what Nick was just saying, realizing where my passions lied and realizing that I was doing this almost more than I was at my everyday job. Realized it was something that I wanted to do, that I wanted to spend my time working with people and helping them take action on the issues that matter to them. And so, yeah, in terms of art, I guess that's kind of always been at the core of a lot of my organizing, finding ways to bring creative expression and experimentation and all of that into it, and knowing that it can be so powerful for our movements to tap into that, whether it's, creating art that makes our movement more visible and more beautiful, or actually having art be part of the participation that folks can engage with when they are getting involved.
Right.
Yeah. Over to you, Luke.
Yeah, epic. Wow, you guys, this is so sweet. It's a good question, and one that kind of comes up a lot, but it depends what you consider. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't actually know how to sort of depends what I'm doing would be the first answer to that question. I think songwriting, like I've been writing songs for 18 years, and they've always just, when I look way back, it's like the first song I wrote was about some like cricket that I'd befriended, and I was like 12.
Right.
And it's what I'm writing today is essentially that in a different sort of way. And so I've been playing music forever and writing these sort of songs. But right now I'm in Tla'amin territory, and I just finished a workshop with a bunch of kids about envisioning what their community looks like going forward and what it means for Powell River to thrive. And so that type of work really kicked off in second year university. watched a couple documentaries in my ENS courses, and then was just like so disillusioned and couldn't sit through class. And so I borrowed / sort of like jacked my mom's car. She only knew like the day before I was leaving that I was taking it for a couple weeks. And I drove up to Kitimat, Haisla territory, and having never filmed or even thought about making anything, just bought a camera and just thought I'd go learn about the Northern Gateway Pipeline, and ended up spending 2 weeks up there and talked to everybody, interviewed tons of people, probably, really practiced some horrible techniques about how to enter a community, but learned a lot through that process. And so that was almost 10 years ago now that I jumped deep into this project and ended up making a film that's not even on the internet anymore, because I decided it was not worth seeing. But it was a beautiful film called One Big Coast, and that sort of launched in this the more modern version of what I do, which is this weird crossover between soundtracks and making albums and filming stuff and interviewing people and trying to help share stories and stuff.
Triple threat.
Cool.
You got all the pulling from every medium.
Yeah.
Awesome. So our next question for our panel of guests is, what about your work inspires you?
Yeah, let me go again.
Yeah.
I'm really just so stoked on people's willingness to get up and do it. And the harder it is for me these days to get out of bed, knowing what the current state of things is and the projected state of things. The fact that everyone gets up every day and folks like yourselves get up and just like get right back at it. And that folks are willing to get on stages, the musicians around me right now, getting up in front of anybody, in my opinion, is a revolutionary act, almost regardless of what you're saying. A willingness to stand up and say what's on your heart is a revolutionary act. And that gets me so stoked. And when I don't feel like doing it, or when I'm stressed or worried or just burnt out, I'm just like, yeah, but like literally today, another 100 million people got out of bed who like really give a damn about each other and the planet Earth. And they're all going to step up and do their very best today. And I take a lot of inspo from that, for sure.
Yeah, I guess for me, I get inspired by spending time in nature. So if my work is out shooting in the forest or in the sea or whatever it is, that's just a positive feedback loop that inspires further ideas and imagery and how I could take that to different places. So I think having established early on that like I want to be shooting outside, I want to be outside, like first and foremost, that just keeps me going. And moving to different environments would sort of spur that inspiration. But like I can go into the same beautiful old growth forest or old growth sea, and it's like inspiring every single time just by being immersing in that energy. And so that's kind of quite simply just being out in nature's inspiring in itself.
Right.
Yeah, I think for me, I guess I would say working with other people and seeing the results of our work. That's sort of the theory of change of organizing is people power, that, more than what any of us can do on our own. When we come together, that's where we can make that difference. And I think that sort of understanding of like collective work and collective action, when we're looking at this big climate crisis and these social problems that are, so huge, that are global, that are local, that don't all have easy answers. It's in recognizing that we need that kind of that collective action, that individual solutions aren't going to cut it. And so with organizing, it's this opportunity to bring folks together and realize what's possible when we do that, whether it's getting out to go canvas a neighborhood or getting out to work on a collective art project and to see it, and to see the results of that. When we think about like who we're up against, like the well-funded corporations and lobbyists and billionaires who are so invested in the status quo, it can feel it can get you down a little bit sometimes, I think. But realizing that we have that people power and we have that creativity to come together, and that actually that is something, transformative. So that's where I get excited is seeing what's possible when we do come together and being able to build that momentum.
Right. You couldn't have said that better. I'm exactly the same way, Paige. Like conversation and just collaborating with other people is honestly what gives me the energy to keep doing it. It's so empowering to have that like around you and like having all these perspectives and voices being like, I like this, I really like this, or this is working. I had a question for you, Paige. How has your work experience influenced your art?
You know, it's so funny. I would say I kind of almost hesitate sometimes to call myself an artist because I'm not, you know, I'm not a painter or a filmmaker. I'm kind of more this like amorphous,
Right.
just like bringing creative practice
Yeah.
into my organizing work. But like, I think that's it, is like wanting to see other folks who maybe wouldn't identify as an artist be able to come in and find other ways to express themselves and test out what's possible, or finding ways to come together and work on something. A little bit later, I'll show some photos from a project that I was part of where we made these giant 8-foot portraits of people from Alberta, envisioning the future that they saw beyond the then Kinder Morgan and now the Trans Mountain Pipeline, or, you know, what they saw for the future. And, you know, it wasn't folks who were like, yes, I'm an artist, I want to come out and paint this thing. It was everyday people who had a story to share, and who, by coming together to work on something, could talk and build community and also have this like incredible result. So it's sort of that people power and those relationships that drives me to figure out projects and ways that we can collaborate.
Cool. Great. Aryan, what you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say that this is a good transition to our next question about how art and activism are in conversation with each other. And Paige, if I could just kind of keep you rolling, tell us about this quote and why you chose to include it in some of the slides you sent over.
Yeah, you know, I think that my favorite artists, and I think actually a lot of artists, see the world this way, where, you know, art is the way that they express, you know, their politics and their emotions and their ideas. And it has this ability to capture people and pull them in. And I think that we see that, you know, there's so many social movements, and you look back at them and you see the art, the posters, the sculptures, whatever they were, and you can see how much it draws folks in. So yeah, I realized early on in my career that like I wasn't a, you know, classically trained artist or anything like that, but I could recognize people that had these skills, and I was like, I want to learn from you, and I want to be able to bring that in, because I know that our movement is powerful, but sometimes we don't have, you know, the easiest way to connect with people, especially if we're challenging the status quo. And so art feels like this incredible little, you know, window in, and especially with things like film and music that the other panelists are talking about.
Yeah.
So yeah, these are some of the photos from this giant art project that we did a few years ago. So started out with these little boards, well, not little, giant boards, and we're painting and creating them. Right. And this was the final project, and they became this this several month project of folks coming together, whether it was to contribute their own photo and their quote to be painted, other folks to come by and spend an afternoon painting, and then they became giant props that we could like take around to protest actions and things like that. So to see the kind of the spread from like a simple idea into something like big and in the world that was beautiful and engaging, that people want to know more about.
That is so cool.
Yeah, it was really cool.
I love that strategy, like taking things, because I find a lot of the art that I am connecting with within the context of, you know, climate advocacy is all digital, but like having something physical space like that, almost like a sign, but in such a more powerful way, because it's like a face, right? It's so that's such a great idea. Because I mean, it's the same for me. I started taking photos primarily just as a way to photograph like climate movements that were happening where I was growing up. And I started taking photos of people in the crowd, and then to have all these images of like expression, like people really passionately chanting or speaking, having that, like, you know, their eyes, like the expression of their faces kind of generates like a collective empathy that I find can energize anyone who really sees it. And that's kind of what the basis of my inspiration has been when I go into any project photographing anything, is really just trying to connect. Like, these are people, these are humans, and that alone for me, yeah, that's kind of what inspires me. That's so cool.
I'm wondering if our other panelists have
Yeah.
input on how art and activism are in conversation with one another.
Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, I think art has huge power in any aspect of things. Like, bringing any creative thinking to an issue is always beneficial, I think. And like, art is beautiful and it's engaging and anyone can do it. And I'm always an advocate of like anything artistic that you can bring into whatever project it is. It's gonna help that be seen. It's gonna help it be it's gonna help it connect to people emotionally, whatever form of art that is. And so I think they're like intrinsically linked, or that activism almost doesn't require art, but I think it's always beneficial to have art involved with activism. It's a different way to tell a story than people talking to you, or it's endless in that way, really, on sharing to promote activism of whatever issue you're trying to work on.
Yeah, 100% with you on that one. I think we've been in this period for a long time. It seems like in the sort of Western world here, the colonized world of this mental game, and there's just like war on the mind relentlessly, and it's the main mechanism that's used to keep communities divided and keep people separated. And I think when we bring art into these spaces of contentious issues, and I've witnessed it for like a decade, just watching people drop into their hearts and feel the emotion of music, the emotion of film, the emotion of visual art. And though we don't all agree on a heart level, the distance between us and the capacity to divide when people are in connection with how they're feeling is they're more of a fortress. And there's also just I'm gonna go on a limb and say far less space for disagreement. I actually think that this unified feeling of love is actually quite unified, and art is our door into that. And we have now this amazing opportunity as a civilization to take all of this amazing heady information that the climate scientists have given us, that indigenous knowledge is bringing forward, and saying, look, this is how systems work, and it's really important to understand how these systems work, and pairing that with this emerging like incredible global art scene of people saying, look, this is like the only place we have to live, and it's actually like totally remarkable that we're even alive, and using art to bring people towards this like this collective understanding, and this idea of a shared experience and a deeply connected reality of our lives here on Earth. I think that there's nothing like, I'm a big advocate for music, but there's nothing like shared singing and the right lyrics to really like drop people into that space of a heart-centered existence where, yeah, we really are far more on the same page than this sort of big current intellectual space that we have right now.
Well, for you, Luke, how can you walk us through your process when you want to translate subject matter that you're passionate about and you want to get across into your musical expression? Like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, it's a trip. I'm still figuring that out, but it's I just absorb ridiculous amount. My superpower is that I can absorb information, ridiculous amounts of it, and then like communicate it in simple terms.
Right.
And those simple terms are music. And so honestly, I just kind of like the rest of us, I'm completely bombarded with the reality of life, and every day and every moment just kind of like, oh, and then if I take a moment and just chill out and go sit on a beach for 5 minutes, or like do some breathing or some meditation and like tap into like a more emotional space, then just like stuff starts coming. And I am my creation process is not a very deliberate one. It's more sort of like somebody takes control of the wheel for a second, writes the songs.
Sweet.
Yeah, that's lucky, because if I had to do it myself, it wouldn't. Nah.
Yeah.
I just want to riff on what you were saying there, Luke, about emotion and art and the powerful role that it plays, because I think that's like one of the biggest things that I've been been sitting with, in this last few months, in the last 2 years, we have so much information. If it was just information or data or facts that we needed, we would have addressed the climate crisis like decades ago, And so I think that really focusing on that role that art can play in terms of tapping into emotion and in helping people, whether it's change their minds or just see things a little bit differently. I think that it's so important. And that's one of the big roles that I think art can play, at least for me, in organizing. And actually just a way of thinking about social change in general. I was part of a canvassing project recently where you don't even go to the door with like a petition or facts or data for people. You just go and you ask questions and you have a conversation, and you're actually not allowed to rebut with any kind of facts. It's called deep canvassing. And the point of it is to access like stories and emotions, and know that that's actually really key to how people think and act and make up their minds on political issues. And so I think art, and especially music, what you were saying about singing and that kind of thing together, is so powerful. And we really need to lean into that.
Yeah, I'll just echo on that too. Like, we are emotional beings, and like to ignore that is useless. And so for my most of my work has been through film, and with Stan Film, which was against the Northern Gateway pipeline tanker route, and our entire goal was get into people's emotions, but by showing how beautiful something is and showing how beautiful the people are and the culture and the wildlife. And a big part of that are the visuals. And then the other huge component of that, in terms of actually tapping the emotions, is the music and the sound design, and where you take people through the emotions is like all via pairing the music with, or marrying the music with the visuals. And so in all the work that I do, I think putting effort and a lot of conscious thought into how are we going to emotionally get into people's bodies, beyond their brain. And because then when you do, and it happens, it's happened in various projects, it's beautiful because people cry, and then they get connected, and they have a response to something that previously they didn't know anything about, maybe even. And that's quite satisfying, and shows that like it is effective if you can tap into those emotions.
That's what's like, I think is such a beautiful thing about film, is it's like this specific medium that allows you enough time to expose an audience to so many different elements that they could then connect with in their own lives, and then reference experiences that they've had. And I think it just provides like specifically film, in just my experiences working with film, it enables people to just connect what they're seeing on screen to things they've been through. And I think that's such a powerful way to connect everyone together. And yeah, so
I was going to jump in. I just kind of had a off the cuff question. Like, what kind of emotions do you think are the most effective at like communicating our message? Because for me, like, I kind of go back and forth on this all the time, because I think I watched a documentary about just old growth here in Vancouver Island called Before They Fall. And like, I was just crushed. I felt like a tree fell on me. But in that kind of feeling of like, not exactly despair, but just kind of like the heaviness of the reality of the situation, like I was still moved to do something, because like I was on the island, and like I was going to, go build boardwalk in the old growth forest, try to protect some cut block land. And so I'm wondering, like, is there a space for kind of that negative emotion, or like, what are we looking to make our audiences feel so that they do something?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that first here. I think you need to go through a range of emotions. I think it can, like, you don't want to just bring people down with negative information, because at the end of the day, the goal would be to activate action, or some kind of response, physical response that someone feels like after they've seen a film or whatnot. And so I think you really need to look at and map out, and this is part of my process, is mapping out the emotional arc and flow within a piece, and where you want to take people's emotions and at what point, and making sure that you leave people with an encouraging or positive tone, that even if you've been bombarded or been fed a lot of gnarly, like, deep information that's like, oh wow, shit stuff, like the world is like pretty hooped right now, you could still come out of it with a positive and encouraging tone and move forward with like, okay, now I'm going to do something and I feel stoked, not brought down. And so that's important to like flow through the emotions, at least in a longer form piece. And shorter form is condensed in a different way. So yeah, I think making sure that you flow through all of it through and leave people with a high, positive, encouraging tone is really important.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that arc, that kind of storytelling arc makes a big difference. I know that one sort of frame that I've heard used a lot is when you're telling a story to talk about, a challenge and a choice, a moment where someone is facing up against something, or where a community is, and that moment of choice and that outcome. And it helps people see what is possible. So even as you're telling a hard story or sharing art that's, exploring oppression or sadness or trauma, to show that folks have agency and that they can make a difference, and that even within these hard moments, or where there's anger or sadness, that there's also hope, that there's community, that there's solidarity. And I think that if we can tap into those kinds of emotions, or even help bring people from something like apathy into anger, or from fear into hope, and find those ones that are actually a bit more of like a catalyst to action, and kind of tease those out and make space for the negative ones, but to show that there is, a way that we can move towards it.
Yeah, it's a real like magician's job. And I love watching people do it, taking people on a journey and doing it so masterfully is like, in my opinion, a good sign of a master artist, I think, is like the people who understand that journey. And I think there's no right answer to this question. And I really appreciate, that arc you were just describing. And I also, I've come to this place in my life where joy is like increasingly absent in the world. And I think there's, where I've landed in a lot of my activism is that at the core of our collective failure, is that we've lost this like reverence for how remarkable it is to be alive, and how truly unrealistic it is, how statistically impossible it is that we're even sitting here having this conversation, and that the earth can even exist is just like unfathomable. And yet here we are, and the processes and ecosystems and all these life cycles, like, it's totally remarkable. And I think I'm taking a lot of inspiration and trying to drive this sense of joy and reverence into my music to get people to that place. And I think it's like, it's all valid. And just on a personal level, I'm just like, every time I get up on a stage, I'm kind of like, well, what do I want these people to feel? And it's like, I think I just want them to like feel an uncontrollable sense of joy of being alive, and knowing that there is going to be a breadth of experience, and that on tomorrow they might feel, more challenging emotions, or they might have to engage in something that isn't incredibly joyful, but that there's space on one end of the spectrum. And I want to push that end of the spectrum further and further. And I want people to be like, wow, I didn't know I was capable of experiencing that much joy. Hoping that there's people out there who are also finding beautiful ways to be like, look, we're going to take this dance with sorrow for a minute. We're going to take a dance with grief and also experience that, and trust that there's dudes like this guy out here are going to try to like open it up that way.
Well, that's a lot to sit with. I'm so glad to have all of these different perspectives out there to be able to take people on a journey. I think now we'll be able to move into an opportunity for the audience to ask some questions as well. We've got 3 great panelists here today with such a range of artistic styles and expressions and lived experiences that inform their work. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. and we'll see how many we can get to. But in the meantime, Makai, is there something that you want to ask?
Right. Well, I wanted to actually suggest, like, in the meantime, do you want to go on to the second part of the big questions?
Yeah, sure. I think, sure. We've talked a lot about how we can kind of influence hearts and minds to make different decisions when it comes to particularly climate. But I'm wondering, for our next question, how can art shape political action? And is it enough just to kind of make people feel good and feel hopeful? Or, how can we politicize our art and make a bigger difference in that way?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Luke.
Okay, so I think I love this crossover of politics, and again, there's a mastery involved in people who can, like, I'll just go with songwriters because I love songwriters, but like, you look at a good songwriter and the way that they're able to, like, dismantle the entire apparatus and also all of our own delusions about the apparatus, this left-right divide, and you look at, like, what happened in Vietnam and the role that lots of folks played in it. I'm not giving it to the songwriters, but, like, you look at, like, what Pete Seeger did and what different, like, kind of folk heroes did in white America to get people who, like, weren't engaged in this issue. It was like, write a really pointed song with some really creative lyrics, or Don't Look Up. Like, there's all these examples of, like, wow, like, you can make highly political art, and I think you can do it in a way, like, people are smarter than we in this movement, I think, often give them credit for. And I think people are, like, actually really politically turned on. It's just maybe not in the way that the environmental community wants to think they are. And so I'm really stoked on the way that people are able to, like, sort of thread this needle, and this idea of, like, truly good political art, in my opinion, is art that, like, makes a mockery of the entire system, is able to go, like, this isn't actually left art or right art. This isn't art that certain people are this is art that's going to make us all look at ourselves and laugh that we even picked a side and that we even got caught up in a delusional system. Yeah, and there's some, I mean, we could talk at length about the amazing artists that are currently doing that, because there's so many of them, but I'm just, when I hear the songs and see the movies, it's just like, that's how you do it, because it makes me look at myself and go, what are you doing?
Right. Paige, what did you have to say?
Yeah, I think just riffing off of that, like, all of the ways that art comes into our movements, or the ways that artists can contribute in terms of, using art to, like, envision and imagine that future and help people see what's possible. I think that's, like, such a big part of it. But also, yeah, to share those perspectives that can shift things. And this is what folks have already been talking about earlier, of, the way that film and music and all of it can come together to, put someone into a new perspective or give them a new view on something, and ideally to participate in it themselves. I think making art is such a source of joy and pleasure for me that, it can be a part of, like, healing and community building in ways that, we might not get from our other organizing work, or at least that I don't find that I do. And so, it's, whether it's, like, overt and it's part of our political action in this, big way, and it's really present, or whether it's in the background and, you're getting together with your friends to, make art together, and that's part of how you're talking about your politics, and envisioning what the future can look like, and building it in that way of getting together and building community, knowing that that's the world that we want to live in down the line. So kind of this, prefigurative way of using art. Yeah, I think that's how I'm thinking about it, at least right now.
Yeah, and I'll comment on my approach in the past. Has been sort of timely with politics. When we made Stand Film, there was a big issue with the Northern Gateway pipeline and British Tanker route, and we wanted to have the approach of presenting how beautiful something is, and then give people the information and let them decide. We did not talk about political parties at all or anything like that. However, it was clear that if you watch it and you fall in love with the beauty of the place and the people, when you go to the polls and you see which party is doing what on this major issue, well, that pretty much directly can lead to voting change, which at a high level, how we vote does actually make a difference. And so with that project, we took that approach, show beauty to, and then allow that beauty to adjust people's or inform people's political position or direction. And then recently, and after that, I kind of have the approach more like you, Luke, which is I just want to make beautiful art to create joy and to spread love and beauty. And doing issue based projects is interesting and engaging, but it can be incredibly draining. And um, doing projects that are based on love and joy and beauty and discovery is very fun and exciting and engaging, and people need that. And I see this same things you're saying. It's like people need this. We're losing joy. We need to bring that. And so I think no matter what, if you share beauty or joy, you're gonna have people that are gonna their political position is gonna be adjusted by that inevitably. They're not gonna choose something that's gonna drill a million oil wells or whatever. Like,
Yeah,
it's gonna affect them.
totally. And I mean, I think particularly that's a great point. And particularly for the young, I know we have a younger crowd here today. I just want to hammer home, and Paige, you essentially said this, is that art is like in a world that profits off of our silence and our sort of self-oppression, art is inherently political. The act of creating art is revolutionary. And it won't always be. If we lived in a world that sort of was all about freedom of expression and everyone's making it, then it becomes a less political act. But right now, it's like you don't even have to make art about politics or the environment or justice, it's just like just you expressing yourself in whatever weird and awesome and unique way that is a highly political act and challenges the very core story that a lot of this world tells itself. And it's beautiful. So I encourage everyone to watch. It's just like, you don't actually have to get caught up in making it about anything. It will always be about something, because like your heart is about something.
I really, really appreciate your approach. Like always going into like check yourself sometimes. Like, wait a minute, I'm alive. I get this privilege to use the tools before me and my talent to make something. And that in itself is just something that should be celebrated. So that's super cool. We actually have a question from a viewer, so I'm going to put it up on the screen. Ooh. You spoke about what inspires your art, but how do you find the energy to create art when you're tired from your day job, schoolwork, etc.?
Yeah, this is so real. It kind of riffs off of what you were just saying, Luke, where I think that folks put a lot of pressure on themselves, or when they look around and see the world is like as messed up as it is, it can feel kind of gratuitous to make art. And what you just said is that that's the wrong frame. And I would absolutely agree with that like we need art. If at the end of the day, you get home from your job or you get home from class and you're exhausted and you put on Netflix and you watch a movie or you open a book and read, like you are consuming art because that is part of what is like making you whole, making you human, bringing you joy. And so to cast any doubt on the role of that in our movement or in the future that we want to live in is just like totally wrong. So I would echo that. And then in terms of this question, it's tough. I think part of it is like believing in the value of your artistic practice and like knowing that it is important to you. And so to set aside time and say like, this amount of time a day or this amount of time a week, like I want to carve out space for this. You carve out space to do your laundry and wash your dishes, carve out space for the thing that brings you that kind of joy and prioritize it. And then also, find ways to like bring that creative practice into the rest of your life, whether it's, like I said, with friends or, with community. Like it doesn't have to be this big project that you're working on. It can be something small that you just do for joy for a little bit of time.
Yep. And the only thing I'd add to that would be give yourself the chance to explore whether art actually requires energy or whether it is energizing as a process. You know, it's like totally, there's lots of days where I'm too tired to songwrite. It's a thing. Like, I don't mean to dismiss that people are exhausted, but I'd be curious. I would just say, you know, it's just like, maybe there's a chance for Vanessa there and other folks who relate to this question. Give yourself a chance. Say, look, I'm going to try 5 sessions, to Paige's advice. I'm going to carve out time for every other day for 5 times, and I'm going to do it for an hour. And then if at the end of those 5 times, I feel more exhausted each time I do it at the end of it, then it's like, then I was wrong and it's fine. It's all good. But I'll offer that opportunity and challenge to say that I think after a few of them, folks might actually find they have more energy, because an exhaustion is often an exhaustion of the spirit, impaired with an exhaustion of the body. And I think we can energize our spirit through expressing ourselves, through creating art. I often feel more energized after I've written and played than I do before.
Yeah, I would say the exact same as Luke there, in that when you're tired, which we all are at the end of the day, some more than others, sometimes doing art, creating anything, that's what then boosts you up and creates energy, and it's often very uplifting, and you'll establish, like, with time, whether if it's something that can be used as a tool. Like, many people, including myself, will use art in any form as a tool to, like, uplift yourself. Like, you're having a downtime and it's like, all right, well, tonight I just need to do some painting, and it's not for any reason other than, like, the act of painting. And when I think that's, like, a really great thing, when you can get a relationship with crafting or arts, that it is a tool for positive mental health and nourishment. And yeah, if it is an energy suck, then, well, maybe another day. But hopefully it's not.
Yeah, if I can just add on to that, Nicholas, I think the other thing too is to, you know, set boundaries around your art or your creative practice too, around, you know, producing something and putting expectations on yourself to, like, finish something so that you can, you know, show it to people or sell it or whatever. I think that there's lots of really cool ways where folks are able to kind of make their art into a career path and that sort of thing. And that is rad, and absolutely go and do it if you have that means and and you love it. But also know that you don't have to be, you know, finishing projects that can be consumed or sold. And so to resist that urge to, like, be productive in a specific way for someone else, and, you know, take that time just to make art just for yourself, and not have that added pressure, because that can be exhausting too.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we are kind of wrapping up relatively soon. Aryan, do you think we have time for one more big question?
Maybe just one quick one.
Yeah, let's do it.
Maybe, do any of our panelists have a question they would want to pose to another panelist?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got one. So I would say, you know, what role, like, I'd like to talk about vision. You know, where has this role of a new vision come into your creative stream and your work? You know, as opposed to sort of this critique of the present.
On that question, I think when you learn about the present and all the things that are not happening that, like, we should be doing 30, 40 years ago and whatnot, it's like you can think about that, or just think about the positive of what it could be. And so visioning a more positive and healthier future is activating versus deactivating, thinking without a vision and just being like, okay, well, this is how things are. It's like, well, that's fine if this is how things are, but what do we want it to be? Because how things are is not, if this continues, this is not okay. What do we want it to be? Let's work to that, because what we want it to be and what it can be is beautiful. And so I think the vision, at least for myself, is, like, huge in that regard. Like, positivity, even if things are going to get difficult, there's beauty ahead if we all, like, work together and, you know, choose love.
Yeah, I think I would echo on that of, you know, vision is about what we deserve. Like in this moment, things are hard, and things are harder for, you know, so many different populations based on, you know, our current structure that prioritizes whiteness, that, you know, prioritizes you know, colonial society, all of that. And so it's really about, for me, recognizing all the problems and the things that we need to tear down and dismantle, is about thinking about like that liberation and that possibility for all of us to have what we deserve. And so it's almost this stepping back from that rage, that frustration, that anger, that politics, and, you know, giving yourself some space to like imagine what's possible. And so that vision is sometimes taking a little bit of a step back, or taking a breath, taking a moment, and yeah, just like, I don't know, I guess imagining and feeling a little bit of hope and possibility, and often connecting with community. That's feeling of solidarity is a big source of inspiration and vision for me.
Awesome. Well, and it's so on point. I just finished a workshop with some kids, and their capacity to envision the future is like totally remarkable. And like, you know, it was like you'd ask them a question about like, you know, whatever, something that's happening right now, and they stare blankly and they're not there. And then you're like, what do you want your community to be like? What in your community isn't working? And what would be really rad if it was here? And they were all like, well, it'd be great if we had bike lanes everywhere, if we had free public transportation. It'd be awesome if we had hydroelectricity. Like, we should probably produce more food. Like, you know, maybe we could like cut down some trees, but not so many. And maybe we could mill them all up and make furniture. And you're just sort of like, what just happened in your brain? And yeah, they carry it. And yeah, great. I just wanted, yeah, vision is something we all share. And those are beautiful answers to the importance of it.
Well, I want to take this moment just to open it up to all three of you, if there's any like closing remarks or anything you'd like to plug before we conclude today, because this was an amazing conversation. But yeah, so if there's any links, if there's any places, we have a couple of links to put on screen, but if there's just anything else you want to shout out, we want to give you this opportunity to mention it.
Cool. I'll start. I want to shout out some local artists who do amazing work, and I'll grab their links and make sure they end up in there before. So Ray Zaragoza is an amazing songwriter, half Indigenous, half Hispanic songwriter in California. I don't know if you guys know Kim Mortal. Kim Mortal's an amazing artist from Vancouver area.
Yes.
Kim Mortal's rad.
Kim's awesome.
Yeah, gotta check him out. Folks Rising Appalachia make amazing art. Desiree Dawson is an amazing artist with a great critique on everything that's going on. So these are all just amazing local female artists that are and non-binary artists that are rocking out. So encourage you to check them all out.
Awesome. I love it. I don't have a list or anything that I want to share, but I just want to say hey to all y'all out there. If you're in BC and you want to get involved with organizing, or you just want to chat more about how you can bring art and like collective participatory art into your community work, I'm always happy to stay in touch. It's paige@dogwoodbc.ca.
Thank you.
And I would just plug Take a Stand Youth for Conservation program. And this goes to a question we didn't get to about, a call to action. Like, say you make a film, I'll speak on film, for example. You do a project, and at the end, you want people to be activated and do something. It's important to have a call to action thought out for the end of that project, what people are going to do. And whether that be directing them to political members to phone or email, or whether it be to make some art. And so with Take a Stand Youth for Conservation, we have an ongoing program with SFU where we facilitate youth through an art contest every year. Makai, what's the name of the name's spacing me on the contest?
We're talking about
the Student Innovation Challenge.
Yeah,
Student Innovation Challenge. Yeah. So encouraging youth to create art through the Student Innovation Challenge. It was a call to action that's a spinoff through that Take a Stand program. And so I think that's just an important side note of like, consider your call to action if you're going to do an issue-based project, like what you want people to do at the end of that. And thanks.
Thank you. Great. Well, yeah. So speaking of Student Innovation Challenge, we will get to that momentarily. But I just wanted to thank all three of our fantastic guests for their perspectives and the great conversation we had. I feel like collectively, it spat out everything that's been bouncing around my head that I couldn't really translate into eloquent sentences. But no, I absolutely resonate with everything all three of you said. So thank you so much for taking some time to have a conversation with us today. And yeah, we will have their info in the description, and it's been posted around here. So go check all of them out and listen to Luke's album. Listen to Luke's album. Go check that out. Give it a listen. And yeah, so I will take you guys out of the stream now. But once again, thank you all three of you so much for joining today. Peace out, guys. Great. Now, Arian, can I pass it to you to introduce the Student Innovation Challenge?
Sure. Yeah. Nick set us up pretty well.
Yeah.
But the Student Innovation Challenge is just a way for Raincoast and Take a Stand to kind of work together to showcase the many inspiring youth-led projects that promote education, stewardship, and conservation of the local wildlife, habitats, and indigenous cultures of the of coastal BC and the transboundary Pacific Northwest. Your project will be featured during a virtual event that will bring together other inspiring youth doing incredible work in their communities and a rich network of professionals like Nick working to protect and sustain nature. So more information can be found at this link, raincoast.org/innovation-challenge. The deadline to submit is May 27th. So there's still time to talk about your project or even start, finish, and then talk about your project for the Student Innovation Challenge. Again, the deadline to submit is May 27th at 11:59 Pacific Daylight Time. And this is for students ranging from grades 3 to 12. And there will be prizes awarded ranging from a stand-up paddleboard to prize packages from Helly Hansen, Fjallraven, Local Landry, Patagonia, and Ecologist, and also adventure opportunities with Malahat Skywalk and Wild Play. So again, the deadline to submit is May 27th, 2022, and we hope to see all of your cool projects.
Yes.
Makai, what are we doing next week?
Well, yeah, I just want to emphasize, please submit your projects. This is a really cool opportunity. And yeah, so speaking of next week is episode 4, and it is climate change, equity, and action. And so our little blurb about it is that the impacts of climate change have impacted people all over the world, including climate instability, heat waves, droughts, wildfires, and flooding. I know we saw all of that in so-called British Columbia in the past 12 months alone. So it's present. And the consequences for wildlife, ecosystems, and humans are incredibly detrimental. Yet the various impacts of climate change are not felt evenly across our society. And it is clear that climate change is disproportionately threatens the greatest risk to those that are the most vulnerable. Therefore, meaningful action or solutions to adapt or become resilient to climate change and its innumerable downstream consequences must address this equity challenge. So in this episode, we will our guests will share their views on change using intersectional and intergenerational lenses, and explore how we can make communities more resilient, how social justice is connected to environmental justice, why it is so important to have BIPOC representation in change spaces, and what equity and diversity looks like in the environmental movement. So that's a really exciting conversation. But yeah, it concludes episode 3, season 3 of Coastal Insights. So yeah, thank you everyone who tuned in to stream with us today. And thanks again to our 3 fantastic guests for sharing their perspectives.
All right, we will catch you all next week for Climate Change, Equity, and Action. We have been your hosts, Arian and Makai, and thank you all for your time. Have a great rest of your day.
Peace out.